All right. Welcome to another expert interview. I get to meet the most amazing people and ask them anything and everything I'm curious about, which hopefully will be valuable for you. Sebastian, I'll let you introduce yourself. I find that guests do a way better job telling their story than I can try. So say hi, tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks for having me, Devin. I appreciate it. Hello to everyone for showing up today. My name is Sebastian Rusk. For the past 15 years, I've been helping people radically change their life and their business because they started a podcast. I'm a keynote speaker and comedian, both terrible career choices, but I got lucky and I'm definitely living in my purpose on purpose. So it's great to be here with everyone today.
Thanks for taking the time, man. I know you're busy. Podcasting seems to be one of these things. Like it's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. But are there too many? Should I start one? Where do we even start with this conversation?
Devin, I get asked that a lot. Are there too many podcasts out there? To which I immediately reply, are there too many books out there? And they're, no, of course not. People start writing books. They never finish them. People do finish them. They don't. Books have been around for thousands and thousands of years. I don't want to predict the future, but I'm going to go on a limb and say people are probably not going to stop writing books. That's number one. Number two, who cares how many podcasts are already out there? You should be building something for your community, for your brand, for your business, for you to position yourself as an authority in your space, for your own little ecosystem and community that you've built, for the people that consider you as an authority. Don't worry about all the rest of the noise and how many podcasts are out there. There's probably, 2-3 million podcasts on Apple. You know how many of those are active? 450,000. So that leads me to believe that number one, we're just getting started in this audio era, as my good friend Gary Vee has talked about for the past decade, really, that we're entering into this audio era and we'll be there for some time. YouTube has replaced television. Podcasting has replaced radio. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, just based on the fact that podcasting has so many different benefits for not only you as a podcast host, but for also the people that are consuming podcasts as well. We teach here specifically at the Podcast Launch Lab is to help people launch a podcast so they can radically change their life and their business because they did that. Well, Sebastian, how in the world do you radically change your life and your business just because you started a podcast? Great question. And I'm glad you asked. Number one, the reason I feel qualified to enable people to do this is because I've lived it for the past 15 years. I am a practitioner. I actively am, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So that's for starters. And then number two, now that I get to see people do the same thing that I experience and have experienced, it's extremely fulfilling to see someone go from, I don't really know if I can get on camera. I'm not really sure. I don't like the sound of my voice. I forgot my lines in the third grade play and everyone laughed at me. And I carried that story with me for 35 years. What we're able to do is silence that inner critic and really course correct the BS radar so that we can get people to a place that they can step into a completely different version of themselves, get their message out and do something impactful.
It sounded pretty good. My follow-up question is, what is your goal with the podcast? Is it to get a bazillion listeners and to be the top-ranked podcast in the world? I'm going to be super famous. What is a real, tangible goal when someone's launching a podcast?
Interview people you want to do business with. Interview people you want to build a relationship with. Get your social media content game in check and consistent because of the podcast, i.e. micro content. And then become a better communicator. Most of us suck at talking. It's my gift. So I don't know what that looks like. But now that when I look back on my 15-year journey as a communicator and a professional speaker, I want to cringe when I listen to my talks from 10 years ago. These days, I was like, that's pretty good talk. But 10 years ago, I thought it was good. But my goodness. So we're always a work in progress. We're never really done. But I think those are the three main reasons that you want to start a podcast. When you find what's in it for me, that's what's in it for you. Unless you hate money, don't start a podcast. If you hate money, then just keep on doing what you're doing.
I love that. So let's break those three down because I think there's little nuggets in each of them. So let's talk connections first. let's go deep there. Give me a story, an example of how do I outreach? What does that look like? How do I build connections using a podcast?
Join a mastermind group. I'm the new guy. Nobody knows who I am, but my only way of being able to market myself, because you really can't pitch yourself inside of a mastermind community. You can introduce yourself, but you can't pitch yourself. So all I do is, hey, my name is Sebastian Rusk, speaker, comedian, podcaster, founder of the Podcast Launch Lab. I'd love to connect with all of you. One of the best ways I do that is to invite them to be on my podcast. I'm sure you've got a business and I'm sure you've got a story, and those make for a great podcast episode. So that's what I do. I lead number one with meeting new people and friends in these mastermind groups by inviting them to be on my podcast. And then we build rapport. I've already done something for them out of the gate by having them on as a guest. So I've already got their full attention. And then just based on pure curiosity and how the ecosystem of a mastermind works, people naturally want to know how they can help. They naturally want to know how they can do business with you. And I think that's across the board. I think that if I'm at a networking event, if I'm speaking at an event, if I've got a gig, whatever it may be, and I meet somebody and they're like, hey, you help people start a podcast? That's really cool. For starters, I'd love to interview you and tell your story. And then after that, we can chat about what's possible with what we're doing here at the Podcast Launch Lab to help you radically change your life and your business by starting a podcast.
Love that, man. Our core principle number one is always add value, right? It's what we always pitch with, why do you have a free community? It's the same thing. Come hang out with us. Let's add value to your world. Let's make connections. All of these are great ways to add value first. And I love that you bring that up. People have this same idea when they write books. I'm going to sell 1 million copies. No, you're going to add value by sharing your book. There's a lot of other reasons. Same with podcasts. Invite people on, dig deep. It's not a sales pitch, right? It's a value-focused ask. I love that. So let's talk about the communication part. What are some best practices for interviewing guests and becoming a good communicator?
Asking questions and shutting up. There are far too many podcast hosts that talk over their guest, far too many podcast guests that ask a question to their guest, answers it, and then they feel inclined to get in there and share their own personal experience on a similar situation. I learned this from the great Larry King. It's the 80-20 rule. Your guest is talking 80% of the time. You're asking questions 20% of the time. You may be asking additional questions to add on to the conversation or the answer that your guest has given you. But I think that number one, making sure it's all about your guest, and then filler words are a gigantic problem. If I hear someone say the word right one more time while they're trying to make a point, I'm going to punch a baby. Like a real baby? Shout out to Dane Cook for that joke back in the 90s or maybe early 2000s. Whatever happened to him? Anyway, back on track here. But filler words only exist and only happen because you're not aware of the words that are actually coming out of your mouth, thinking about what you actually want to say, are saying, and what you want to say next. Our brain goes, I don't know what to say right now. So it's when people say they're seeking validation from the audience, that right can be utilized when communicating in the right context. But if you I've called it out now. Now, everybody that's watching this and listening to this right now, this is going to be a yellow cars moment for you, right? You never think about yellow cars until you want to buy a yellow Corvette. And then you look around and you saw 7 yellow Corvettes in Reno, Nevada in one day before 12 noon. Our focus and attention often makes that relevant on here, but now you're going to see how much it's going. Yes, as well is another huge filler. Mine used to be awesome. And every time I'd interview somebody, they'd say something, everything was awesome. I was like, is this the only word you know, guy? So I had to really course correct myself. And now with the work that I get to do with people, I have to silence their inner critic, but I also have to help them talk. And I do that by helping out with their tonality, their pacing, how they ask questions, how they show up, being aware of the words that are coming out of their mouth. Devin, we live in a world where we are listening to figure out what we want to say next. And I'm trying to change all of that. And the only way we do that is through intention and intentional listening and actually giving a rip about what someone has to say. Imagine that. Holy cow. Imagine a world like that. But I think that, for starters, is what I mean when I talk about becoming a better communicator. It's a combination of silencing the inner critic and the BS story that isn't even true that you've told yourself because of an experience or because someone told you could or couldn't do something when you were 10 years old, and really making that distinction and figuring out what is in fact true.
Everyone has a word. And I love that Denise put one in there. And I'm sure I'm going to slip up and use one. And then Sebastian's going to reach through the camera and slap me. So this will be fun to get.
A rusty nail file in my eye would be less painful than listening to somebody who says every third word.
Stages all the
I
time.
usually say, hey, Denise, you like the word like, huh? And you'd like, and then you're automatically dialed into yourself.
Gary sent me a private message, said he was editing a video, 536 filler words in 46 minutes. And a lot of the AI editing now, you can see that and it'll let you look at what's going on. Love that. Talk to me about the sales correlation. I want to go down that road for a second. As a podcast host, you're asking questions, and in sales, that's a great skill set that I think is missing. How does that translate over? Do you have those conversations with your clients?
Not really, because they usually have their sales process down, or one would hope if you own a business that you do. So what I tell them is everything that you would do in a coffee meeting or a meeting, pitching your services or identifying an opportunity, do that same exact thing during the podcast interview. If you're doing that same exact thing during the podcast interview, chances are you're going to close more deals. I got a local client here that's in my B&I networking group, and he does retail point of sale. So everything up to swiping the card. So the hardware, reward systems, etc. He's made about 200 grand just by interviewing retail business owners on his podcast. Doesn't care about marketing. He texted me last week. He's like, I just made another 25 grand from a podcast interview. Who needs sales reps when you have a podcast?
That's a great example of a physical retail style business too. Talk to me about social media. So that was your third big benefit of having a podcast. What are some best practices? How should people be using it, promoting it, cutting reels? Talk to me about social.
Yeah, most people are grossly negligent with their daily social media content, which is mind-boggling to me because no one is looking at billboards, listening to radio ads, listening to television ads. Why? Because we can just fast forward right through. Depends what plan you're on. Traditional advertising, while it does still exist, is completely taken a back seat to where the attention is, which is in the newsfeed. That's where the eyeballs are at, because we are digitally addicted to this little device that we carry around with us that we don't go anywhere with. We sleep with it. We take it to the bathroom. The statistics would say we're no more than 3.5 feet away from our cell phone at any given time. We are digitally addicted. And with that said, as a business owner, why in the world would you not want to be in the center of that attention? So what we teach is your podcast is a 30 or 45 minute piece of content that can then be chopped up into micro content, reels, clips, audiograms, images, and you can essentially fill your entire content calendar because of the podcast and kill two birds, sometimes even 3 or 4 with one stone.
What do we do about production? So you just mentioned cutting it up and doing follow-up with the content. For the average business owner, that might feel daunting. Are there companies that help? Do you help with that? What are best practices when it comes to chopping it up?
Yeah, as a business owner and a podcaster, you should be doing one thing: networking, interviewing people. All of the back end heavy lifting should be off your plate. We support our clients to not only launch the podcast and do all the back end work, but we support them ongoing. So we're producing micro content, producing their podcast, 4 podcast episodes a month for them, and doing all of the heavy lifting so they can focus on what they do best: running their business, living their life, and not getting bogged down. That is the number one mistake people make: record the podcast, edit the podcast, do the reels, upload it. If you think that's sustainable, you got another thing coming, because what that is work. And when it starts to feel like work, it's not fun. And when it's not fun, we quit. That's human nature. And I don't care how much you love audio editing. I would rather wake up in the morning, punch myself in the face and eat my pillow than edit anything. But I have an entire team that absolutely loves it and does a damn good job of it.
Talk to me about audio versus visual. Should we do audio only? Should we do audio and video? What are the benefits of each, or what's your recommendation?
Yeah. So first of all, video podcasts don't exist. So don't at me. I know that's a very unpopular opinion, but I'm going to help you better understand and bring you back to reality on why they don't exist. I know YouTube and Spotify trying really hard to coin the phrase video podcast. But if we look at the true definition of both pieces of content, a podcast, audio file uploaded to the internets to be consumed auditorily. YouTube, a video platform for viewing purposes, watching things. Sebastian, I record my podcast with a camera. There's a video component. Great. If you have a video recording of your podcast, which is what it is, and you edit that video and upload it to YouTube, you now have a show on YouTube that just happens to be recorded while you record your audio podcast. So I dig my heels in to this opinion because there is mass confusion because everyone thinks that every single piece of content is a podcast. I was just having this conversation with my brother in Utah last week. He's a YouTube guy. Dude, we just call everything a podcast. We just give them what they want. We help them launch. I go, but you're launching YouTube channels. Yeah. But if they want a podcast, we're like, yeah, YouTube channel is a podcast. We just give them what they want. And I'm like, you're the problem. You are the problem. And there's a huge conversation within my peers in the podcasting industry that if YouTube did take over the podcasting space, that would be a wrap for podcasting. Because when Steve Jobs moved podcasts to the RSS feed, that was the first line of independence for anyone, anywhere to create a piece of content, upload it to the internet and get it out without vanity metrics. Because if you know anything about podcasts, you don't know how many downloads my podcast has unless I tell you. You don't know how many subscribers I have to my podcast unless I tell you. Now, if you go to YouTube, you're going to automatically judge me by how many subscribers and how many views I have on each video. And if there's not a gazillion, I don't care how good the content is, you're probably going to click on to the next guy that's got a bazillion. So we've also been conditioned as a society to judge based on vanity metrics that don't really even matter. Yeah, it shows that 1 million people watch that video, but I think being able to preserve the independence of podcasting as an audio platform to enable people to consume it auditorily. Secondly, if you send me a video that you really like, Devin, my brain says I have to watch this video. I can just press play and listen to it, but my brain says I need to watch this. Now, different people have different ways of learning. Some are visual, some are audio, some are a mix of both. I understand that. So should a podcast have a video component? 100%. Otherwise, everything I just got done talking about regarding social media content's null and void because there's no video component to create that content. So yes, record a podcast just like we're recording this right now. Zoom, Riverside, however you do it, because it provides the component of video and audio. But leverage the video. If you're gonna upload the video to YouTube, make sure you're editing it so it fits within the format of YouTube and just say, hey, I got a show on YouTube. We also have a podcast. We also take the content from both of those platforms and repurpose it into micro content. So I hope that adds some clarity to the world.
Talk to me about the follow-up. So we're inviting people on, we're having great conversations, we're going to outsource the production. As a host, what does your follow-up then look like? What's your best practices to move those conversations forward?
For me, I want to book another call so we can talk to you about our 90-day done for you launch program and we can see if you're a fit. So if I get done interviewing you on my podcast, I'm going to say, Devin, when are you launching a podcast? I've been thinking about it lately. It's funny that we're doing this interview right now. We should have a conversation. Great. Let's do that in the next couple of days or next week. How's Tuesday at 10 per, or I can drop you a link to book a call, book a time that works for you. So get that call booked on the podcast and once the interview's done. So you're either going to chop it up before the interview with the person, the prospect, or after. So do the interview and then chop it up. How can we help each other? How can we work together? Let's schedule a call. Don't let that conversation go cold. Sales conversation go cold at the end of the interview just because the interview's over. Make sure that you're identifying that opportunity. And that's just my process. But that's also what I teach. It's very comparable. You want it to be as non-salesy and organic as possible because people can sense nonsense and I know what this guy's up to. And it's already becoming, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's pretty known that if you don't have a podcast and I invite you on my podcast, you're going to be like, I know what this guy's up to, but you don't care. Why? Because you want to be on a freaking podcast, because you have an ego and you love your ego stroked. So I think that what's going to happen is this is going to become more of a mainstream normalized thing as time progresses. And that's why it doesn't really matter how many people have a podcast out there. It just matters how good your content is and how good you are at identifying opportunities to get the right people on your podcast so you can do business with them.
Let's flip the script and talk guesting. So I know a lot of people in AC's connection group and people I run into want to guest and be on more podcasts. So let's talk about being a good guest. What are some recommendations if you're going on other podcasts to be a good guest?
Great question, because I hear that a lot too. Of, hey, so Devin, when are you starting a podcast? I like to guest on podcasts more than I would like to start a podcast of my own. But then I also offer them something. Hey, Devin, what would it look like for you to have your own podcast, interview people you want to do business with and build a relationship with, and guest on other podcasts? Because what can happen is, hey, Devin, we should do a podcast swap. I'll be on your podcast. You can be on my podcast, double the content, and then we can identify what opportunities are there. I'm more inclined to book somebody. I'm different because I want people that don't have a podcast, but I'm more inclined to book a guest if they already have a podcast, because I know I can attach another opportunity of me being a guest on their podcast if it's a fit. So yeah, podcast guesting, that's really started to take off. In fact, I'm in the process of building a podcast network, not for necessarily having shows, but being able to play matchmaker with podcast host and then quality podcast guests, because I think that there's a huge deficit out there. You either a podcast booking agency gets you booked on large shows for thousands of dollars, or you've got lower level podcast bookers that'll just get you booked on any podcast out there as long as it's a podcast. So I'm trying to figure out what that all looks like. First things first is building a list of 100 podcasters that want to be part of the actual network, and then starting to play matchmaker within that, and then see where it goes from there. That's always been the original vision of the Podcast Launch Lab, is get the launch agency and production agency to a place that is consistently growing, and then throw into the mix some ancillary things that complement the world of podcasting. It's taken almost 10 years to figure out exactly what we wanted to do. But I think the timing is right because people understand and get it. And there are so many podcasts out there, and there's a need for people to want to actually be on a podcast. But if you're guesting on someone's podcast, you should be on there to pour into that audience and share your expertise and provide as much valuable information as possible. Not to make it about you, not to show the world how cool you are, and then also not to make it a pitch fest either.
Is it a 15-minute podcast? Is it a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast? Like, what length do you recommend for a podcast?
They're 8 to 12 minutes for a solo episode.
Perfect. You teed that up. Let's talk solo episodes. So I was going to ask that question. There's the guest component when you're interviewing people. What about just solo episodes, creating content for yourself? Give us some best practices and where that might fit.
Yeah, bang, 8 to 12 minute episodes are not that hard. And you can easily share. That's why I started my second podcast. I don't recommend starting 2 podcasts. I'm not the norm. Not everyone is a fit to work with us, but I've been gifted with a talent and a gift to share with the world. And it's my responsibility to reach and impact as many people as I possibly can with that gift, whether you can afford it or not, whether you're a fit or not. You may not be a fit for our agency. Doesn't mean you can't read my book and go do something about it. Same thing applies with the podcast. I do 8 to 20 minute episodes, solo episodes, and I just dissect the book, or I dissect whatever wild hair I get on a day about podcasting, or a question that I had a client text me on Monday and say, hey, Sebastian, do you have any resources available for becoming a better podcast host? I said, I don't yet, but give me a couple days. But in the meantime, here's what ChatGPT has to say about it. We just got done. I just posted it on LinkedIn today as a carousel, and on Instagram as a carousel post of how to improve your podcast interviewing skills. So I try to find out what people's biggest need is. I forgot what the question was, but here we are.
Was doing solo podcasts.
Solo, yeah, there we go. Solo
Yeah.
episodes. Get your expertise out. Number one, people might find you and go, hey, man, you solved my problem. Appreciate that. People may also find you and hire you. So that's the reason. And then also for solo content, it's great because one 15-minute podcast episode could be several pieces of micro content. It's also a great filler for when you don't have a guest. So that format, and I encourage my clients, because a lot of the clients I get to work with will say, we don't have an episode yet, or I haven't booked anybody yet. Cool. That means we're going to take the bull, we're going to grab the bull by the horns. We're going to go ahead and bang out some solo episodes.
Talk to me about AI and its impact on podcasting. There's AI video stuff. There's AI audio now. There's all sorts of AI. What are you seeing that impact the industry, positive or negative?
I think the positive impact are the tools and resources that help podcast production come along. I don't think that you can open up a CapCut account and avoid having to have an editor or content or anything like that, because you still got to take the episode and throw it into CapCut, the clips, and Riverside FM does the same thing. You still have to do that work. So I think that AI is a tool to make life easier and better and improve the overall experience. Here's what we're not in a rush to do, Devin. Replace the human experience. Now, I may marry a robot one day if she's got a mute button, but I don't think we're in a hurry to replace the human experience. If we look back to 2020, when we stayed home for a year and we got locked into our house, remember how we couldn't wait to get outside and just hug somebody without the awkward church hug with a mask on? And the desire, because we're designed to be in community and designed to have that human connection. I don't see AI eliminating that. Maybe if it's the end of humanity and it's doomsday, that's where we're at. But I think that AI, like everything, every other component of AI, this world is going to make life better, faster, more interesting. I think we are in the midst of one of the most fundamental shifts in human history that any of us will ever see. I was just talking to a client yesterday who's a good buddy of mine. I'm 46, he's 32, and he has the audacity to call me old. And he said, you grew up with seeing it all. I go, yeah, we grew up where we had to be home by the time the streetlights went off. We actually went outside and played with our friends. My mom had a unique gift to just open the front door, scream Sebastian, and I knew it was time to come home. That was the era we lived in. And when someone wanted to talk to you, they had to call and they had to ask your parents if you're home and if you can come to the phone. Then we also went from having to get up and change the TV. Remember that? Some kind of animal. We had 13 channels, depending on how the bunny ears would work with the tinfoil. And then we had cable. And then we had VCRs. Then we had DVDs, and then Blu-ray. Because then that brought us into the beeper era. Beeper era brought us into cell phones. And then my daughter's 24. She was born with a device in her hand. And, well, life has never been the same.
That's a great perspective on AI. Talk to me about a huge flop either you've made or a big lesson learned. I'd love to hear a horror story around podcasting.
Trying to edit my own podcast. That's probably the biggest mistake I've ever made with podcasting. And then also not dialing in exactly who my avatar was. Once I got that dialed in, like we work with 7 to 9 figure business owners that don't have a podcast, want a podcast, don't want to do the work on their own, want to work with the best and want to get there yesterday. If it's not in that box, I wish you the best, but you're just not a fit. It took a while to get there. But I think being able to dial that in, we're not for everyone at all, nor should anybody be for everyone. We are for a vast amount of different industries, for sure. Because people like to say, who's your avatar? That's the avatar. But the industries, I could go on, very much like the book world. It's a variety out there, which makes it great. I can get in where I fit in. As long as you got a 7 to 9 figure business and you want to start a podcast, we've at least got something initial to work with.
Being in the podcast space, what are you listening to or watching if you're looking at shows? What are you digesting? What are you liking?
Theo Vaughn is hysterical. He's been one of my recent faves just because he's funny and it just seems like an everyday guy. I'm a big Rogan fan, obviously. He's the GOAT. I like him better as a podcaster and a UFC commentator than I do as a comedian, oddly enough. I don't think he's that funny. His last special was pretty decent, but what he's done for the comedy world and helping transplant the entire comedy ecosystem from Los Angeles to Austin is nothing short of incredible. So I'm really grateful for what he's done for the world of comedy and what he's doing. If you look what he's done with Tony Hinchcliffe and Kill Tony. Kill Tony started in the basement of the Comedy Store with 10 people showing up and is now the biggest comedy podcast on the planet, which happens to record now at the mothership in Austin. And that whole ecosystem that Rogan has started to build out of comics he's come up with has been incredible. Rogan's amazing, and he's the best at what he does when it comes to podcast interview. I listened to a few faith-based podcasts. There was a gigantic church out of Australia, Hillsong, came to the United States and started a church in New York City called Hillsong New York City. And a guy pastor by the name of Carl Lentz. And the church grew and just become an absolute phenomenon. 60 Minutes did a special on them. They're meeting in nightclubs and unconventional spaces and Hammerstein Ballroom, and people are lining up for 2 hours to get in. It's a very unconventional church experience. And it was going great until Carl had a little bit of life show up and had an extramarital affair and slipped up and, of course, was let go from his job and completely disappeared for 4 years to go rehabilitate his life. His comeback vehicle was a podcast. The podcast is called Lights On with Carl Lentz. And he started the podcast unpacking the whole story. So now the show, I think, is in its second season. He just had Steve-O on. He's had a few other large notable names. He was already a very notable person within the faith space, but also the secular world as well, to the likes of Justin Bieber and a lot of NBA players and influential names. So I'm sure he's resuscitating a lot of those relationships or continuing to fuel into them through the means of a podcast. And the reason I give all that context is like, fallen from grace pastor disappears for 4 years to rehab his life and fix his marriage, and comes back as a podcaster, has zero desire to ever enter back into the world of preaching or as a actual preacher, but leveraging his gift as a communicator to have conversations and share real life experiences. And I tell you, that has been one of my favorite podcasts. I was always a fan of his. He's a phenomenal communicator. It's one of the skinny jeans and tattoos and all these good-looking pastors in this non-denominational movement of church these days, which I think there's a huge need for that because it attracts people. And I think that's why Christianity is growing as fast as it is now, because we've removed the religion part of it. So that's not an answer or a rant on Christianity, but there is a play with podcasting there and how faith has come along with it. Personal development podcasts are fantastic to be able to get in there and figure out, whatever it is you may be looking for on there. I tried the Daily Stoic, a daily book I read. Great Ryan Holiday, phenomenal author. The Daily Stoic's a daily read. You read whatever day it is. If it's the 5th, you read the 5th on there. And I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. And he has a podcast that complements it. So he'll do a 10 to 15 minute episode every day on the actual Stoic philosophy for that day. And I really do enjoy that aspect of it. But yeah, I'm a huge advocate and consumer of podcasts. There are a lot out there. And then comedy podcasts that's why I love Theo so much, is because he has real conversations with non-comedians. The conversations that happen on podcasts, Theo is one of the most in-demand, arena selling out comic, hillbilly, redneck, mullet rocking comics, but he's sitting down and talking to presidential candidates.
I think the thing that Theo, and I'm glad you brought him up because I really enjoy listening to him as well. But I think what's great is he asks the question you're thinking.
Yeah.
He doesn't try to be politically correct or worried about being can't. Like, he literally listens and then he asks the question that you're sitting there going, I wonder. And he goes, hey, I wonder if, and you're like, oh shoot, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. So that conversation about cocaine with Trump they were talking about, the main reason he really wanted to interview him is that Trump's brother died of alcoholism, and Trump has never touched a drink in his life because of that. And of course, Theo is sober now as well. And that was obviously there was a presidential play there as well, but it was something to the tune of like his past cocaine use. And he was like, yeah, man, cocaine gets you feeling like a mechanic, You'd be out there in your front porch at 2 a.m. acting like your own street lamp. And to see Trump's response on his face based on that. But it was like, aside from politics and everything, like we have the world's largest or in-demand comic at the moment and a presidential candidate like chopping it up about a conversation. I just think that's the beautiful part of the world of storytelling and where we're at with platforms like podcasting.
Love it. We've covered a lot of ground. Anything we haven't talked about, you feel like we should have? Any nuggets of wisdom, anything there?
I pose this question on every talk that I give, and I pose it to a lot of people I get to have conversations with, because I was asked this question 15 years ago, and it woke me up. I was able to step into a space and a version of myself that I didn't know was possible. And that question is, who's missing out because you're not showing up? If you've had an inclination, an idea, a download, I think it was Reba McEntire that said that gut feeling is God's whisper. Those are all reasons in and of themselves to take massive action, because if it's not enough to just go, if I'm not doing it, who cares? I'm not bothering anybody. Someone is missing out because you're not sharing your gift with the world and with them. It could be one conversation and one thing that you have to say that can radically change someone's life and put them into action. I don't know about you, but that resonates in a deep way that I, in fact, use that same question most days to myself. You know why? Because you're never going to feel like it. But who's missing out? Because you're not showing up. And what a hypocrite you are by posing the question, who's missing out? Because you're not even showing up. So for those of you listening and watching, I hope I get so far in your head and in your mind that I keep you up at night and drive you to a place of action, because that's what I'm here to do.
What a great question. Adrian, how much research do you advise to develop the interview? So research before interviewing someone. What's your comments on that?
I'd go to ChatGPT and go, today I'm interviewing Devin Sizemore. He is a professional connector and helps people publish books. The name of his company is this. He likes to do this. Here's his LinkedIn profile. Give me a podcast outline for an interview that is 30 to 40 minutes long. Structure it so it's easy to read and digest, and hit go and let the robots go to work. And then take that, copy and paste it into a Google Doc and use it as a guide during the interview. Not a script, a guide. That way, if you lose track or your look squirrel moment, you've got it right there. And then it also can be converted into your show notes, which is the description of your podcast episode.
You unmuted?
I did. I was just curious, how does podcasting monetize?
Interview people you want to do business with.
Okay. Fair enough.
Hey, I've got a podcast. I know somebody that Devin really knows, likes, trusts me, really likes what I'm up to. We have a similar customer. Hey, Devin, for $500 a month, I'll get you on the podcast once a month. I'll tag you on all the social media content and I'll plug you during the episode. What do you think about that? Devin, cool, man. Let's try it out for 6 months, see how it goes.
Okay. Those are two good ideas.
Thank you.
Gary, anything noodling on your end? Any last minute questions? I'm just curious.
Are you there? It's discretionary. We do 3 clips. We do an audiogram and 2 reels. You can do as many as 7. I don't know how much content you can actually post for it to be effective. That's an ongoing conversation. Hey, post twice a day, once a day, 3 times a day. If you're Gary Vee, it's 25 times a day, as much as you possibly. I think what it comes down to, Gary, is how many clips make sense within a 30 or 45 minute interview. Because not every single minute of that interview is going to make sense. The initial talking point, the beginning and the end have to actually make sense to get the clip.
Yeah, and we will be using the Almeria robot. If I can hit mute, that clip will 100% be used to promote this episode.
Do it.
Sebastian, man, I appreciate your time, your energy, your thorough answers.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was great to connect with all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.